Well, hello. Welcome, sunflowers. It's so good to have you with us today. I'm almost at the bottom of my cup. That means I'm going to have to start my day, right? So, this week on 78 cards in 78 weeks, we are working with the Seven of Pentacles. This has been an interesting and challenging card for me. And this morning, I had a realization as to why. And we'll talk about that as we look at the card today. Normally, during this time, I would share with you the things that have come into my life this week or projects that I've been working on and that type of thing, but I really don't have anything. I also don't have any new cards to show you. I haven't done any updates, though I did actually create a card that we haven't drawn yet. I have this very specific idea about some of the cards, and so I've been working on them when I get inspired to. And so we'll definitely be looking at those again in the future. Why don't we hop on in and talk about some of the cards in my collection and the seeming disparity in meaning in this card? And I'm going to talk a little bit about why that is um, after we look at some cards. So, many cards will do a version of the Smith Waite image of someone looking admirably, what is that word? At their garden, and there are many beautiful depictions of that out there. Welcome Tarot Stash, um, and here is the Light Seers. This is actually very pretty. I love how all the coins or pentacles are different colors in her deck. It's very pretty. This is actually from the Pocket of Peers, and this is actually Cedar McLeod, who is watering their garden and enjoying it. So, this is an interesting departure from the Smith Waite in that they're actually working on their um, task of trying to grow things versus just admiring it and looking upon it. And we see that in a few different cards here in the Fyodor Pavlov. And we even see some cards where they actually start harvesting. And that is one of the words that people tend to associate with this card is harvest. This being the bone, stone, and earth flesh. We get some where we just see the garden. This is the Spacious Tarot. And then the Jewel Marv also did the same thing. As I looked at this card, I was like, I thought it initially was the nine because of the peacock and my association with the peacock. But then I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe this is about whether or not the peacock is going to steal your harvest. I don't know. There's not a guidebook or anything for this deck. In fact, there are not even card titles on it. So, which is actually kind of cool as long as they stay with imagery that people recognize, right? We get some cards that look a lot like aces, showing new growth. This is from the Mystic Garbage. But there are definitely two distinct themes running through cards. Either it's all about success and enjoying the fruits of your rewards. This being from the Hip Chick Tarot, obviously a more positive deck, and expressing that idea of, you know, we're reaping the results of our hard work and our effort. But then you get cards like the Urban Tarot where it's very hard to see because this is a blackout in New York, and and they focus on failure. And some people would look at the RWS and see failure because they associate that card with the potato famine and say the leaves all look withered and dried up and that type of thing. Welcome, Amy from Strength Reverse. Glad to have you here today. Um, Now, The next 2 cards are actually some of my favorites because they depart from the garden theme to another idea or concept in, the results of effort. Um, the first is the Lightworkers deck, and it's about the golden egg, right? About the fruits of your labor. And then in reverse, it's actually about, diminished returns. And that's kind of how I have begun to see the card as I've studied it. In that upright, it's about the harvest, about the rewards, about the outcome of your persistence. But in the shadow side, there's also, that idea of it failing. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that when I talk about the Golden Dawn's name for the card and the Tree of Life. This one related to it. This is actually the Goblin Tarot. It's actually a hen house. You never know. Are your hens going to lay eggs? Or are they not going to lay eggs? I had a friend the day that I was working on this and I pulled this card out. She posted on Facebook. She was like, "Yay, the hens started laying again." And she showed us a picture of all of her eggs. And so that was kind of like serendipitous, right? Yeah, the ones that are not garden themes actually, kind of speak because we're so used to seeing the garden themes. And so those new ideas really do speak to us. And Gerald mentioned the SKT, which I actually have to show you in just a moment and talk about an important idea in it that I kind of picked up on. Um, the the Numinous Tarot, which is by Cedar McLeod, who we saw earlier in the Pocket of Peers, actually focuses on an author who is at a signing. They've actually completed their book. They put in all the effort and everything. So, like, is anybody going to show up? Does anybody want this product that I have created? Kind of idea. And so, definitely another way of looking at it. But probably my favorite is this card, and some of you already know what it is looking at the back of it. Um, and this is from the Slow Tarot. And this deck does a really great job of associating the pentacles with finances. And so in the Seven of Pentacles, we actually see a person cheating at gambling. And so at first I'm like, wait, that's the Seven of Swords, not the Seven of Pentacles or coins. But then you think about it, it's like this card is really about whether your effort is going to pay off or not. And so I really began to really gel with this card. And this card really added new depth and meaning to my understanding of it from the first time I started working with it. Um, yeah. So I want to look at the Tarot de Marseille and the Thoth in this card because this is one of a handful of cards where um, my own work is going to be influenced by those images more so or equally so with the Waite Smith. In the Marseille, this is from the New Choice Tarot de Marseille, we have the Seven Pentacles in this specific arrangement. Well, this arrangement, which Benebell Wynn talked about in her video on the sevens, in geomancy is called Rubius, and it actually is a bad omen. It means strong emotions about a matter. So, are they positive or are they negative? But generally speaking, in geomancy, apparently this is a bad omen. And this imagery is seen in Thoth decks where the card is called failure. And they hold on to that image. Another Thoth inspired deck, but again, because it's also Smith Waite inspired deck, the Lost Hollow incorporates, you'll see some growth there, some vines or plants of that nature. And finally, I have here the card that Gerald just mentioned, the Seven of Orbs, which is from the Spirit Keepers Tarot. This is the Revelation edition. It's called the Gardener. So to me, this card takes a little bit more of a neutral response, like I'm going for, to the Seven of Pentacles, coins, orbs, whatever you want to call them, rather than making it completely negative or positive. It is more about the persistence that goes in, that long term planning to achieve a goal. And so, in that way, it relates to everything related to the earth suit, your finances, your health, um, and your physical world. And you'll see here that she also chose to use that arrangement of the orbs from geomancy. Um, so that kind of negative connotation is there. And the reason for that, I think, is because this is inspired by both Waite and Crowley. And I want to read what Waite says about this card, because it's very interesting to me, um, that he said what I had already been thinking, and that is that, um, regarding the divinatory meanings, he says, "These are exceedingly contradictory. In the main, this is a card about money, business, about um, altercation or quarrel, or about innocence, ingenuity, or purgation." And so he's admitting here this is a card that's really about two things. And that is true of all of the sevens. Okay. Our Seven of Cups is about vices versus virtues. Is it true? Is it false? What we're seeing. The Seven of Swords is about risk versus control. And then our Seven of Wands is about fight or flight. And so all of the sevens, because they are about assessment, and I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about the number seven, because for me, one of the things that is important to me is that my cards relate to my understanding of all the things connected to it. And for me, sevens are about assessment. And I thought I'd share something with you that I did a while back. Some of you may already be familiar with the book Tarot and Earth by Tom Benjamin. And in it, he walks through an exercise where we're encouraged to look at multiple sources for numbers, the 1 through 10, and their meanings, and develop our own as a way of reading pip decks, right? And so this is what my spreadsheet looked like. I had 10 sources, and I may be hard to read depending on your screen. So I'm just going to give you a idea of it. But I used the Untold Tarot, Tarot on Earth, Holistic Tarot. I use the Galaxy app on my phone, and then also Biddy Tarot's site, Labyrinthos site. I used Kelly Fitzgerald's um, keywords, and then the Wolf of Coins keywords from their channel. If you're not watching Wolf of Coins and you're interested in Marseille, you really should. And then these are my own distillation of what those each mean, as well as like the light side and the shadow side. So in the positive, and then the reverse. And so for me, after looking at what everybody had to say and thinking about sevens in general, my key words were reflection and assessment. And I really feel like that's what comes across in each of the suits in the tarot, because each one of them is really about two different variables, two things that we need to look at and say, all right, is this, yes, a spreadsheet instead of an index card, Gerald. It's glad to see some spreadsheet appreciation. Obviously, I haven't finished because I'm still working on my thought distillation and how I can relate it to everything else. Um, so yes, so that's where I came up with the seven, and what it means, assessment. And I think that corresponds well with all four of the cards. So let's talk about that idea that it's contradictory, that it's action versus inaction, it's failure versus harvesting. Um, the Golden Dawn called this the Lord of unfulfilled success or success unfulfilled. And to me, what that says is not that it's failure, but that we don't know if it's failure or success, right? We're assessing whether it's a success or a failure. We're looking at it and going, okay, we've put in the effort. Is this going to be come to fruition? Basically, is there going to be a harvest? And if we look closer at some of the other correspondences to this specific card, we'll see that contradiction again. For example, astrologically, it's associated with Saturn and Taurus, the idea of limiting our growth or the limitation of our resources gives us that kind of failure aspect of the card that we tend to see in the Thoth. In my opinion, I think Crawley's a little bit too negative sometimes, um, versus choosing to incorporate the full meaning of the cards. Um, but then when we look at the Tree of Life, this card is in Netzach, which is about victory through persistence or perseverance. And it is in the world of Asaya, which is the world of earth, the world of action. So our perseverance leads us to a place in the physical realm where we act. Okay. And so here our action is about what will be produced. You know, is our persistence going to result in something? Um, it was quite simple, easy to do. Thank you, Gerald. And actually, I think that that is available in my Dropbox. I actually have several things that I posted in my Dropbox, and I actually share links to them periodically on various videos. I think I have one for the chakras, one for numerology, and then some tarot cheat sheets that I created. But um, you just type things in boxes and then highlight them and make them different colors. It's okay. Um, we're getting off track on spreadsheets. Um, so where was I? So we were talking about the Tree of Life. Yeah. So the Tree of Life to me gives a much more positive aspect, whereas the astrology gives that negative aspect. So I feel like both of those really need to be in the card. And when I was thinking about this card and what I wanted to see in it, all I could think about was how I've always struggled to grow things. Like when I was a kid, I always planted a garden every summer in our yard, and I tried to grow things that I love to eat, like radishes and carrots and things like that. And you know, I might once in a while get a little carrot like this, but that was about it. And right. This brings up an interesting idea in that as I was working with the This Might Hurt this week, I was like, oh, yes. So, and something I have been doing with my cards is trying to make the dominant color in them a color that I associated with a suit. So, like in the This Might Hurt, your wands have this kind of orange background, and then there's kind of a yellow background in your swords, and a blue sky versus a kind of green colored sky in your pentacles. And so, in that way, probably going to bring colors into my deck as well. But again, we're getting off track. I love the discussion though. Um, we'll have to think about this though. Is using a spreadsheet the essence of the Seven of Pentacles? Huh. Maybe. So overall, for me, this card seems to be about the effort that you put in. And I had this realization this morning is that my father is the upright version of this card. He's all about the long-term planning, the persistence, the patience that goes into making a beautiful garden. Like, I mean, he has roses and pecans and figs and grapes, and he can grow anything, and his yard is beautiful. And I'm the reverse. I am lazy, I am impatient, and I am just looking for the results. So my yard is a patch of weeds. Um, and so some of the other kind of shadow sides of that are hurrying through things, which I can tend to do. Um, things leaving things unfinished. Anxiety, which is something that I've always suffered with, just general dissatisfaction or a delay of achieving your goals, coming into obstacles. And so, and as I thought about this, it just totally clicked with me and became personal for me, because this is why my father and I have never been able to enjoy activities together, because he is totally the Seven of Pentacles upright. He's like patient, and he's going to put in the effort, and he's doing things for the long term. Whereas I'm more like results, 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 and an impatient person. So, yeah, action versus inaction there. So why don't we look at the card that I created? Now, when I started this card, all I could think was I felt like I wanted to move away from the gardening aspect, but then I couldn't think of a way to make it personal to me without the garden, because I have never raised chickens, mostly because I would probably stop breathing from being around them. Um, and Yeah, yeah. So I actually yeah, this is one of the it's so funny that you would say that, because I've just started working on losing weight again, and trying to get healthy. I just it's working from home. I'm always sitting. And yeah, never getting any exercise. So trying everything I can, right? Um So we were talking about my card and about the imagery, and I couldn't find exactly what I was looking for. And so I started out, and I did actually create a card, which I posted in the Good Journeys into Tarot group. If you're not a member, please do join Good Journeys into Tarot on Facebook, so you can help me and talk about the cards and make them the best that they can be. So this was the initial card that I had done, this idea of planting a garden and things growing. And I actually kind of liked this person, because as I've created this card, I've realized my father is who I see in this card. This kind of reminds me more of him than the other image that I ended up with. But I really didn't like this. It was just like, I need to do a card today, so here's what I did. And I just wasn't finding the imagery, and it wasn't connecting for me. And so then yesterday, I decided, after having read all the books and still being like frustrated with my cards ideas and whatnot, to watch some YouTube videos on the Seven of Pentacles. One of those was been about Wen's series, where she's walking through all of the cards, and and this idea of the geomancy arrangement of the pips kind of stuck with me. And I'm like, okay, that's something I think I want to incorporate in the card, because I want to see both the positive and negative sides of this card, because this card is about both of those, right? It's about action versus inaction. Do we harvest? Do we not harvest? Is it time to act or not to act? And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to connect it with another card in the deck. I wanted to do roses to connect it with the ace and the nine, but I couldn't find a rose bush that wasn't beautifully filled with flowers. And so I ended up connecting it to the page and using the apple tree imagery again to create a card. And so initially I created this version because, a lot of people want to talk about the tool, i.e., the rake, which represents the hard work, the persistence that we put in, that type of thing, as well as the garden, which represents growth. And I began looking at this and I thought, okay, well, now that I have this, and I don't know if it's visible, but my intention was here is that geomancy arrangement, those three apples and then the four apples. And I wanted to do it so it looked more realistic, like some of the apples are at the back and some are at the front. Hopefully, the apples will still be visible. So the ripe apples make that symbol, right? Whereas there are also some green apples on here. And I thought the green apples are important because it's questionable, is now the time to harvest? And then I thought, well, I definitely have to add some more to this image because it just looks kind of bland. And so I added some more trees to make it an orchard. And I also decided at that point, I'm going to add an empty basket. That empty basket representing that idea of whether we're going to harvest or not harvest. Is it time to act or not to act? And so I set him under the tree contemplating this. But also that idea of rest after the hard work and the effort, pausing and waiting to see the results. And one of the things you'll notice is that there are no apples on the other trees in the orchard because we're at that point where things are just coming to pass. And we don't know whether yet this is success or this is failure. That's something that I wanted to see in this card. Just like with the Smith Waite image, you get those leaves, which could be dying for all we know. So we don't know whether that plant is bearing fruit or not bearing fruit, really. We're assessing that situation. And I think that the idea of the empty basket and some of the apples being ripe kind of gave that idea. This is an image that when I find an illustrator to illustrate my deck will probably be very different. But I couldn't find the imagery to create the personal scene in my head that I wanted here. And I thought that this was a good way of depicting the ideas and the concepts that I wanted, um, and make it go with the rest of the cards in my deck. So that basket basically replacing the rake as our tool. In this case, the tool of harvesting, that idea of whether we're going to harvest yet or not. Rather than having completed all of our hard work already, there is still the potential for more work as we harvest. The Marseille call gives this idea with this card of you have to spend money to make money. And that's really the energy of this card. This is about long-term planning. It's about putting in the effort to make things happen in the future and deciding when the point is that you've reached that goal and then taking advantage of what you've created. And so I think that I've captured that in this card. And I think I actually hit all of my notes, which is unusual. I usually get off of here and go, wait, I forgot to do something. Here's my coloring. Oh, you can see this if I am embiggen myself, as Tarot Stash would say. And really, I kept true to the RWS. I tried to make some of the pentacles more ripe than others or less ripe than others with my coloring. And I just decided to add a pop of color on this guy. And do it that way. So definitely still would love to have conversations with people about cards. So please do message me. Let me know that you're interested and about to be on one of these talking about the cards and sharing your thoughts on them, as well as please do join the Good Journeys into Facebook group. Sorry. I love to combine words. Good Journeys into Tarot Facebook group, so that you can help with the creation of the cards throughout the week. And keep abreast of what's happening elsewhere in my tarot journey. For those of you who missed last week's episode, I have just finished an article for the Cartomancer, which is in the process of being edited, and hopefully I'll see how much editing it needed this week, which will be coming out in June. And so very excited about that. So let's pull our card for this week to see what we're going to be working on. All right. Oh, wow. So, interesting side note, this morning when I did my week ahead spread, um, the first two cards I pulled were both sevens, and one of them was the Seven of Cups, which is our card for this week. So this was the first card I drew on my weekly spread with the SKT Revelation, and now it is our card of the week. So this week is all about vice versus virtue. And this is another card where we see two very different interpretations. Some look at this and see opportunity, choices, others look at it and they see fantasy and vices and the seven deadly sins. So this will be another interesting one to talk about and to create. I actually played with creating it a while back in my head and got frustrated and gave up. But now I have to do it for all of you. So if you guys would love to talk about vices versus virtues next week with me, and the meaning of the Seven of Cups, please do let me know. I'd love to have you on. Until then, everyone, I hope you have a great week. I know that lots of things going on right now, not just in the world, but I mean, gosh, daylight savings time is still a thing. And the temperature, if you live in the South, is like really absurd. I mean, it was in the 80s and then it was in the 20s. And I don't think it's been this cold in about 2 years, maybe longer. And only one day at that. So please do take care of yourself, especially with pollen season and the weather changes and all of that going on and the lack of sleep from daylight savings time. And I will see. Gerald, what are vices? I've never heard of them. Well, join me next week and I will let you know. Oh my goodness. All right, guys, until next week, good journeys.